Now, the other big news today was the unemployment rate. It was steady, 5.7%, so that's not terrible news, but there were about 10,000 jobs lost during the month of July and a drop in the participation rate. This means fewer people are actually actively looking for work. Joining me now, the Shadow Assistant Treasurer, Matthias Cormann. Senator, thanks for your time. What do you make of these sort of job figures today? Are they a worry or are they better than expected?
Well, I mean, they are a worry because what we see is that there are fewer people now looking for work. And of course, we know that Labor is planning for a massive increase in unemployment. They're planning for 800,000 Australians unemployed. And of course, what we need here is a real plan for more jobs.
What sort of unemployment rate would you be hoping to achieve in your first, I don't know, your first year in office?
Well, I mean, when we were last in government, the unemployment rate had a 4 in front of it. And of course, I mean, what we are focused on is a plan for a stronger, more prosperous economy and a plan where we will create 1 million new jobs within 5 years.
Yes,
and
but of course economists say that's going to happen regardless of anything politicians do. I'm asking, in the first year of office, would you get below 5% unemployment?
Well, I don't think that it will happen as a matter of course. I mean, I dispute that. I mean, if we keep on the same trajectory that we're on at the moment, with the cost of doing business continuing to increase, with productivity growth continuing to slow, with our competitiveness continuing to reduce as a result of all of the additional lead that Labor has put into our saddlebag over the last 6 years, with the carbon tax, the mining tax, 21,000 new pieces of red tape and so on. If we continue on the same trajectory, then we will see more unemployment. And of course, we've got to change direction in order to achieve more jobs.
OK, but will unemployment be lower in the first year of a coalition government?
Well, I'm not going to give you our pre-election economic forecast or our pre-election costings today. I mean, you know that this is a matter for another day. What we
sure, but if you're going to do all the things you're saying, surely unemployment would be lower in your first year.
Unemployment would be lower than it would be if we stayed on the same course that the Labor Party has put Australia on, for sure.
OK, but will it be lower than today, 5.7%?
Well, unemployment will be lower than it would be under Labor.
That's impossible to judge, Senator, with respect, because they wouldn't be there.
I mean, Labor is planning for more unemployment. We are planning for more jobs.
All right, so you are planning for a lower unemployment rate than 5.7%?
We have a plan to create 1 million new jobs within 5 years, and the way we'll achieve it is through measures like our 1.5% cut to the company tax rate, like scrapping the carbon tax, like our commitment to scrap the mining tax, like our
if you pick up on those three things,
business red tape.
Those three things you mentioned there, scrapping the carbon tax, scrapping the mining tax and cutting the company tax rate, all of those measures are going to cost a lot of money. And I know you've identified some savings measures, but as a number of newspapers and others have pointed out today, not enough savings have been found. Will there be more savings measures announced?
Well, firstly, it is not right to say that not enough savings measures have been found in relation to the policies that you've mentioned, because, I mean, we have, of course, already announced more than $17 billion worth of savings measures.
I thought it was less than 17 billion, so it's more than 17.
We have already announced more than $17 billion worth of savings, and of course the major policies with significant fiscal implications, like our commitment to income tax cuts, to fund income tax cuts and pension increases without a carbon tax, because that helps people with their cost of living pressures, and our commitment to a company tax cut, because that helps with our plan to create more jobs. Those commitments together are assessed as costing about $17 billion over the forward estimates.
But then you've got the FBT change that you're going to undo. That's $1.8 billion you've got to find.
Well, and indeed, between now and the election, we will be presenting you and everyone with a full list of all of our spending and all of our savings measures, and it will be there for all to see. Everybody will be able to assess the net fiscal impact of our spending commitments and of our savings.
So, OK, so there will be more savings announced, though, between now and the election?
Sure. I mean, we've always been very clear about this. We've already announced $17 billion worth of savings, and we will continue to build on that between now and the election, and people will be able to see all the detail and pass an informed judgment on that.
On the paid parental leave scheme, I think the full details of this are expected next week, but when it comes to this inequity argument that Labor runs and privately some in the Nationals do as well, why should a woman working in a high-paying job in an inner-city wealthy suburb be entitled to more money for looking after their child than a woman who's a stay-at-home mum or struggling in a low-paying job?
Well, as you've correctly identified, we will be releasing our paid parental leave scheme sometime over the next week or so, and Tony Abbott and Joe Hockey will be, of course, leading that announcement, and that is when we will be able to go through all of the ins and outs of all of that. But let me just say this: our fair dinkum paid parental leave scheme is an important economic reform for Australia. It is part of our productivity agenda. It is part of our plan to lift workforce participation by women, and it is part of our agenda to achieve stronger economic growth. And of course, stronger growth will ultimately lead to more jobs. It will ultimately also lead to more revenue for government without the need for all these new or increased taxes that we've been getting under the Labor Party.
But what about this equity argument? I'm just interested in what the response is to this, because this will be the central line of attack, that some babies you're going to get $75,000 of taxpayer support, other babies you're going to get a lot less.
Well, I mean, the way you've got to look at this is that, I mean, if you talk about an annual leave entitlement, I mean, obviously you would not ask this question. You need to look at this. Obviously, our commitment is to a replacement wage. Our commitment is that, I mean, obviously, if you want to have that impact on increased workforce participation that we're seeking, you got to do it up to a certain level, and we've capped it at, of course, an annual income of $150,000 in the past. That's what you need in order to be able to have that impact on increased workforce participation.
And finally, can I ask you about Peter Beattie? Is he going to change the dynamics of this political contest, particularly in Queensland?
Well, here we've got Kevin Rudd promising a new way, and he's going back to a failed old Labor Premier who was very much part of the old Labor. I mean, he's a failed Premier. He was the ultimate master when it came to spin-over substance and all talk and no action. I mean, he presided over massive corruption in Queensland in his time as Premier. I'm not so sure that this is going to be a good idea. I mean, they're all smiles for the cameras now before the election, and they'd be stabbing each other in the back after the election, as they've done in the past. And this is just a recipe for more chaos, dysfunction and incompetence from the Labor Party. I mean, people who vote for Peter Beattie are voting for another 3 years of the sort of chaos and dysfunction that we've had over the last 6.
Shadow Assistant Treasurer Matthias Cormann, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Always good to be here.
Now, after the break, we are going to explore a bit further the unemployment data that was out today, what this is telling us about the economy and how both sides are treating this argument. Are they treating it seriously in the final weeks to go of this election campaign? We'll be joined by Stephen Koukoulas and our very own Peter Switzer. For New Zealand viewers, New Zealand News is next for you. Here in Australia, PM Agenda continues.